So let's start by just turning the head. As you turn to the side, feel that shoulder releasing a little down into the elbow. Then just up and out. And clasping the hands behind the back. Straightening the arms to pull the chest up. And now circling the head. And the other way. So hands up and out. Now just imagine you're holding two cables, so two handles with a weighted cable pulling out. So you pull the hands towards each other, but it's difficult. So you really have to get the back involved. So you arch the back, pull the shoulder blades together, and it pulls the fists towards each other. And then just open the hands and imagine two objects here that you're trying to push out. You don't have enough strength in the arms. You have to get the back involved as well. So you bow the back, pushing the shoulder blades apart, and the hands move out. And then grabbing the cables, pulling in. So we just imagine resistance. We imagine it's much more difficult than it obviously really is. So here I'm really bowing forwards. And then here I'm really pulling in and looking up. Spine is bowing and arching. Bringing the hands round to the front, keeping the arms straight. Folding the hands in back into prayer. It's a rowing action, which basically that was anyway. So reaching forward, but now you can really bow the back. So pushing the spine backwards, but the hands forwards, head looking down. And then think of pulling the elbows back and trying to touch them behind your back. And reaching forwards again, the shoulder blades really separate. And then arching the spine, pulling the shoulder blades together, but thinking elbows, trying to touch behind your back. Again, imagining you're pushing something out here and then pulling something in. We're using the imagination to just make it more difficult than it really is. It means the muscles are stimulated to work more, but also those muscles that are protecting you kick in. So imagine you really were pulling weight. It's not just pulling using the muscles that are doing the pulling. You've got to protect the spine. So there's a sort of like a determined tightness around the spine that protects it. Let's just try a few tightening into the belly. So where we tighten the belly muscles and try and pull everything in here and then squeezing it out. And they're all breathing exercises, these really. Then let it just become the simple breathing, using the arms to mark the breath. So breathing in as the hands come out, breathing out as the hands come in. Trying to extend the breath. So when you breathe out, you breathe more out than normal. And when you breathe in more than normal. Clasping the elbows behind the back. Now leaning forwards, trying to keep the spine straight. So leading with the chin. Once you can't go down any further, just let the whole spine drop so the head is almost touching the floor. And then come up by squeezing, so tightening the buttocks. Be careful you don't jerk the spine. It's very easy to damage the spine, especially this time of year when the weather's shifted. So down again. Tightening. And now let's try a couple over the legs, turning towards one of the knees and down over the knee. Up. And then the other knee. and up, and then the other side again. Up and the other side. And up. You remember a while ago, I sent a quotation. George Quasha, who's an American poet and artist, he was just illustrating different levels of attention. The example he was giving was pouring cream into black coffee. So he says, imagine you've just poured some cream into the black coffee. And he was giving three different responses as levels of attention. So the first response, there's too much or there's not enough cream. So like a factual response, which we could think of as the male response, the man's response. And then the second level, it's more like an aesthetic response, which is, oh, it's made a lovely swirl. So you imagine that's the female response. And then the third level was what I would call the imaginative response, so more like the child. So the child will look and say, oh, wow, look, a dragon. Those different responses, it's not simply a matter of degree, it's a different world. So each one of them is of a different world. So what we're trying to do really is just get out of the first one and into the final one, into the child's world, the imaginative world, where everything that happens sparks the imagination, activates the spirit, and takes us into heightened awareness. And so all of these move, every time you move the body, it's almost like, oh, there's all this flurry of color, and it just brightens everything up and just makes it special. Okay, let's try a little with the stick. It's like here, I mean, working the back like this, it doesn't just make the spine straighter and physically lift the heart. It's like it's turning you into a fancy French aristocrat, adorned in silks with a wig. Let's bring the stick up. Our heavy elbows, the elbows are trying to drop. Now, if you can, just let the stick down so it's in the crook of the elbows. And now just a few turning. And then back up to behind the neck and a few more turning. Just feel the difference. And now the tipping to the side. the stick above the head, and the same thing. Take it down the front, keeping the arms straight all the time if you can. In a sense, we just sort of continue with an exercise until we slip into that imaginative realm. I mean, most people never touch any of the levels of attention because their mind is wandering. So it all starts with just being able to keep your mind on what it is that you're doing. And then in time, it will just shift into the heightened levels. Pulling and pushing. So this is really susceptible to that attention. And then pushing. Bring the hands up and out. Turn one hand over and start turning the head and twisting the arms. So it's figure of eighting effectively. And just bringing the hands in, and it just becomes the figure of eight. Keep the spine turning, tipping, gyrating, twisting. And gradually reducing the figures of eight. So let's take it into the heart this time. So just imagine the heart, this yin yang symbol. And your hands, especially your middle fingers, are tracing this figure of eight in the middle of. Gradually reduces to next to nothing. And now let's just see. You remember that Jamie Oliver series where he's trying to train kids on the dole to run a restaurant in Hackney? The series is about him trying to train these kids to be top chefs. And there's one scene where he's made pumpkin ravioli, and he's wanting to see if they taste it, their response. And of course, most of them think it's disgusting. One of them even has to rush away to spit it out. But there was one girl, she puts it in her mouth and chews and just says, "Oh, I'm thinking Halloween." And he rushes over and gives her a big hug, because it was like she was the only one that was in that imaginative realm where it just, the experience, the feeling sparked something. And now just bringing the hands up to the head, sort of holding the head, but so gently, it almost tingles with the gentleness of the touch. And then just think in terms of trying to lift your own head, but like someone else is doing, like someone's behind you and they're just holding your head and with the gentlest of forces, just teasing it upwards. So as the head is moving upwards, you're actually relaxing down the spine. Feel the neck just loosening and lengthening. And then start just pumping the head, just trying to get it to expand. A sense that we're trying to get the mind to expand out of the head, out of the cranium, and become this sort of large, expansive cloud. And the mind that's locked in the head is the thinking mind. That's the one we're trying to get away from. So we want a mind really that's just pure awareness. And out and just back down. So the lower dantian is this pool, which the hands are holding. The middle dantian is this yin yang symbol with the gyrating figure of eight in the middle. And this is just this expansive cloud. Let's try doing the eyes before we go down into the fetus. Just rubbing the hands. And the hands over the eyes. Then the hands up. And now down into the fetus. Separating the feet a little so you can sit down between them. And down into the fetus again. and up. And let's just try a little lying back and cycling. First of all, just pulling the knees up and out. And then straighten one of the legs down and really pull the other knee up. And then bring the straight leg up and straighten the other one. And the other side again. And the other side again. And now just cycling, trying to get this openness in the groin. Into the squat. Okay, let's start with the bouncing. So the spring in the legs. The spring is always ready to receive, and once received, it's always ready to return. The spring in the legs and the openness here. I want the feeling that if I bend the legs and really go down, my fingers get sucked into these gaps either side of the pubic bone. So the hip joint, the groin. The November Sumo Championship in Japan finished last week. And surprisingly, the person that won it was a 21-year-old Ukrainian guy. And the Japanese press apparently are in shock because what they say is Westerners are all upper body strength. And it's only really in the Far East where they have the strength in the legs and the flexibility in the groin and hips to be able to get close to the ground. So they're all surprised that a European won it. So in the sense, it's all we're trying to do really is just gain that sort of strength and flexibility in the legs and the lower body that they would have naturally in the East. But just imagine that, you know, the mawashi, that loin cloth that they wear in sumo. So it's tied around the waist here. Then there's a flap that goes down covering the privates. And then at the back, it comes up between their buttocks and then ties at the back. So there's nothing interrupting this hip joint. So you're being held together here on the waist, but also you're being cleaved apart by the strap at the back that goes between the buttocks. So you can just imagine that. The problem with trousers is, even though they may not be heavy, they give the impression that there's not much here. They sort of cover up this fold. And if anything, we want to sort of accentuate it, exaggerate it. And then alternating. Opening the legs a bit. Same thing. So the willingness of the legs to go down, the willingness of this to bend and open up, and the stretch and spread across the sacrum and the hips at the back. It's what we're aiming for. And then basically you just slow that down and it becomes the turning. Really trying to get my hips round. So a lot of people will just sort of turn from the shoulders because when they get down, it sort of immobilizes the hips. So we don't want that. We just want to make sure there's still a lot of turning flexibility in the hips and the lower back. Feel the action of the legs. So remember, it's the empty leg that is active and the full leg is passive. So the active leg is the one that can move me. The passive leg is the one that supports me. So here I'm sinking into this leg, so it becomes fuller and this becomes empty. So now this can straighten to move me and then instantly start pulling to pull me back. Then this one starts straightening to get me round as far as possible, and then it bends to pull me back. So as I come back to the front, it's the back leg pulling. And then as I go past the front, it's this leg, which is now a back leg, pushing. So I push away from the front and I pull back to the front. We just want to feel it. And it is a feeling as much as it is a physicality. So we really want to get away from that world of facts, the scientific world, the world that science investigates, the physical, factual world. Not because it's bad, but because it's not of us really. So it's very much like the lowest common denominator. So we're trying to get into the world of feelings. What's peculiar to me? What is my uniqueness? What can I contribute that no one else can? So I'm pulling myself down to the ground and then I'm pushing myself away from it, pulling down, pushing away. And then as you push away, allow the shoulders and the head to go further. So now twisting the spine as well as turning from the ground. Again, how is it making you feel? What colors are you seeing? What animal are you becoming? And now let's bring it to riding horse. Yeah, just a real willingness to let the legs take you down rather than push you up. Again, just imagine you're wearing this mawashi, so there's a cloth down the back that's cutting you in two. So really allowing this split here. So these legs rolling like this. And that will pull the sacrum forwards a little bit. And then once it's in the right position vertically, you can really feel it just dangling down from here. Gravity streaming down through the body. Let's get the circuit going. Gets to the sacrum and then it has to split into the two legs to get any lower. And you have to do something a bit special there because it doesn't really want to split. And then into riding horse again. Yeah, so when we get the openness here, the sinking, that will stick the tail out, receiving in these points. As you go down, you'll be more and more inclined to become leaning forwards or even horizontal. It's like when we get down into a squat, unless we've got the heels off the ground, we can't really have a vertical back, otherwise we'd fall backwards. So the deeper you go and the more it opens here in the groin, the more you'll tend to lean forwards. So the tail is out, but by rolling here and getting the sacrum moving forwards, that's the bum in really. So I want a tail that is out, but a bum that is in, or a sacrum that is dropping heavily down. Think of the tail being a little bit of life on the end of the sacrum. So the tail can point wherever you want it to. It can wiggle and wriggle. So my tail is trying to point backwards, but my sacrum is just hanging heavily from here, which itself is hanging from the ceiling. Elbows on the knees, a bit like a squat, but with the feet wide apart. Hands on the floor. And now you really have to let sacrum drop so it's almost on the floor. This is the sort of flexibility we need in the hips. Elbows on the knees again. And now hands on the knees. That's it. Looks great. Wild. And then you can just come off the heels a bit just to make it a bit more intense and interesting. So what we used to do with knit stand is just be up and down from this bloody posture. So we want to come up into riding horse, but without feeling that we're chickening out and coming out of the legs. So somehow I just have to bring my spine up a bit without sort of unloading the legs too much. And now let's come off the heels. So the sacrum, the elbows really heavy, stabilizing you, but the knees, fingertips, and the top of the head really light, trying to drift upwards. And then rocking back onto the heels, trying not to straighten the legs. As that happens, the ground is sucking your heels into it. Let's just give the legs a bit of a rest. So bringing the feet up, but not straightening the legs. Let's try a little bit of that heart qigong. Keep the legs bent, but reaching out so that heart opens to gather as much of the world into it as it can. Feel it going deep into the heart. And then there's like an almighty explosion. Something comes shooting out the top of your head and cascades down all around you. The arms reach out. And that act in itself opens and swells the heart so that it's got space for what it brings in to be contained. So the mind will analyze and dissect, which isn't a bad thing, but then you need the heart to put it all back together again, without which it remains dead. because the mind will kill everything. Now let's try the shoulder, sinking down the weighted leg so that the other side can free up. So here you can really feel the mass sinking as the spirit rises. And taking the arm the other way around, so swimming basically. Let's bring it into riding horse again. So these opening as though they're trying to receive your fingers, which will send the tail out, and then the thighs rolling out, which will bring the sacrum in and let it drop. So it's like a fine line between those two, just trying to get some balance between them. Feel the gravity streaming down. So melting, softness. Sense that your solidity is melting and flowing downwards. And then the levity, which is just this sense that your solidity is vaporizing and evaporating upwards. So the steam rising from the pot. Remember, the levity, it doesn't really affect your body. It's much more your spirit, your mood. You can imagine the sort of good, light mood you would need to be in for your imagination to be really active and sparking. That's what we're looking for. And now let's go backwards and forwards. So pulling with the leg. So this leg becomes straight and then it bends in order to pull my weight back into it. It's like the two legs are squabbling over your weight. They both want it. So they're both pulling you, which gives this sense that what's in the middle is being stretched. The legs for most people are squabbling over who, because neither of them really want the weight. And then that will just push everything up and into a clump. That's what we're trying to get away from. So this is bending and I'm stretching here. And then this is bending and I'm stretching here. You have to really feel the passive leg. This leg has my weight and it doesn't want to give it up. I want to stay here. And yet this leg is trying to pull me. So it has to pull quite hard just to start that weight moving. So there needs to be a little bit of a pause that you can really just settle and relax in the weighted leg before you activate the other leg. So this now I have to just let the leg have it. And then this one. And just feel that the spirit that sparks the pull, the bend, which is really a lift. Yeah, so when the knee is bending, it's actually trying to lift upwards. And I feel that as almost like an excitement that washes up the body. So it's like, ooh, that's the spirit. This is why pulling with the legs is so important, because every time you do it, you get a burst of spirit rising up. So pull, woo. So pulling the ground pulls my body down, but it lifts the spirit at the same time. I'm just trying to get out of the factual world, which is basically the world without attention. Because as soon as you start giving your attention to things, it's a different world. It's a world with color and life and detail. That's what we're trying to get into. Something in me wakes up and suddenly I can just see so much more than I could when I was half asleep and just moving like a zombie. So every time I tug with the foot, the dragon in the coffee wakes up. Whee! That image he used was really inspired because of course the dragon is the image of spirit for the Chinese. Now let's try with the other four chords. Feel that spark. You know what John was like, when John was sort of be really excitable or excited and spirited, and he'd sort of be using the energy, he'd be going, he'd always crouch down. There'd always be a sudden snap back of his hands, and his eyes and his eyebrows would really lift up. So the body really dropping down a level, but at the same time that the spirit is rising up a level. So you have to do that, otherwise you'll lose your balance. So when this knee breaks, it pulls me down, but it lifts my spirit. My eyebrows lift. My eyes look startled. You feel like really alive, like an animal would be. So an animal, it seems they're as far from automatic, mindless movement as possible. They have to see all the details. They have to see everything because their life depends upon it. We have created an environment where we could just wander around asleep or self-engrossed, which is the same thing, really. Feel the tail. The tail is really active. It's really sticking out. It's wagging around. And yet the sacrum is, ooh, that's the serious stone, the stubborn stone of the sacrum. To riding horse. Yeah, so when we come back to riding horse, there's always that tendency to come out of what you were just doing. In other words, come up. But then we have to re-establish the down when we're in riding horse. So getting this, the tail going out a little bit, and then rolling the legs and the knees to bring the sacrum forwards a bit. And when you get it in the right position, there's no longer any sense that you're looking down at the world. It's a disadvantage of having the eyes up here. If the eyes were down here, all of this would be a lot easier. And now let's come off the heels again. So just lifting, get it established. So my sacrum and my elbows are heavy, but my knees, my fingertips, especially the middle finger and the top of my head, are really light and trying to lift upwards. And then we want to put the heels back down, but without any sense really of straightening the legs. If anything, the ground is sucking the heels into it. So it's pulling me down even more, unfortunately. Expanding, breathing. Now let's try just a bit of the two circle. Just imagine that person in front of you. Get your arm around their waist and pull them in for a nice sloppy kiss. Or here, it's like the leg has to be strong enough to support the both of you. So I really need to release and relax down into the leg. And of course, that will then free up the other side. The weight is moving side to side, and we just really want to feel that. Remember at school? Remember my science teacher telling us mass and weight are not the same thing. It took me a while to get my mind around that. So mass is the amount of matter, and that's independent of gravity, whereas the weight is the force that your body would be imposing upon the scale. So of course that depends upon little g. So even though I have the same mass here, there's no weight in it. So I'm just feeling that weight moving from leg to leg. And as it moves out of a leg, I feel that leg like almost breathing a sigh of relief. And that lifting up the body is like a wave of rising energy. And then just bring it back into riding horse. Again, feeling these points. Ooh. And so when you get them really released, it's like, ooh, it's like suddenly you're no longer holding back. We don't realize how much we actually retreat from the world even before we've come into it. So when you release here, you're just there, almost like you're in front of your own body. It's lovely when you meet someone like that. I've got a friend, he's got a son, 13-year-old son, and he's like that. Yeah, he just can't help himself. He's just there with you, and yet he's a bit shy as well. And so there's like a double message, he just wants to come towards you, but at the same time, he's not quite sure. And he just resonates. He's just shakes with energy. Let's just try stepping back and forth, the one we from the warm-ups, but just really feeling it. So I sink into the leg and lift this foot, and then I step out and I pull myself into the leg. And now let yourself bounce out of it, the way we bounce out of the leg, back into this one. And then this comes up and steps, pulling into the leg by bending this one, and then bouncing out, feeling the energy returning. And then the leg is just going with that. The leg's not pushing me so much as following the energy. Feel the 2 feet. You need to have these 2 feet on the ground. It's like a circuit, like an electrical wire. The electricity will only flow if both ends are on the battery. So here I'm pulling with this leg, but there's very much a sense that I'm pulling from this foot. And then I bounce out of this leg. But if I haven't got this foot, then I'll just bounce anywhere. So this guides that return back into itself. It's like the 2 feet are just playing like this all the time. So when you feel that and get that, there's not that much difference between pulling and pushing. It's just the 2 feet playing with each other. Pull. And then I can either bounce out of this leg or I can pull with this leg and just see that really it's the same. Feel that point where the foot comes off the ground. It's like ping. That's like a little spark of spirit in itself that switches you into balancing on one leg mode. But here, it's like I have to become a different person a little bit because it's a different set of problems I have than when my 2 feet are on the ground. Or a little bit with the other foot. Stepping, and I pull. And then I just sink into the leg and I bounce out. Pull. And everything sinks into the leg. And at some point, I'll bounce out because I just physically can't go down any further. There's something about energy. It's like it just has to keep flowing, has to keep moving. Otherwise, it's gone. So I'm sinking this way. And there's a point where it can't go any further, so it has to move back. dropping it back. Breaking here in the groin, sends the tail back, and then the sacrum just dropping with this rolling out of the thighs. You know you've got it when you just feel a lift here. And then let's come off the heels again. It's trying to relax all around the sacrum. We really need to get a feeling for the sacroiliac joints. So you can just place your mind there and it will soften and release a little. And then without coming up too much, rocking back into this heel, rocking back into this heel. And there's just a few breathing to get back into the long energy. And then just down, elbows on the knees again. And hands on the floor. Yeah, so really trying to get almost like you're sitting on the floor. And then elbows on the knees. Try and keep the pelvis down. And then hands on the knees. Yeah, it looks good. And then just up and bringing the feet in, just being careful not to straighten the legs. Yeah, it's just got a really careful, attentive feel when you have bent legs, almost like you're just listening that little bit harder than if you were to straighten the legs and cut off. The legs bent, this real feeling of the gravity streaming down your body. The big toes pushing down. What that will do is help the knees widen a little bit so that you can feel this openness here even when your feet are together like this. And then mind in the dantian, just pinpointing that place. And tip of the tongue on the roof of the mouth, like it's trying to push up into the midbrain, into the pineal gland. This is suspended. You can think of the tongue actually pushing up towards the ceiling through your head. And the eyes just really softening, this feeling that they've swiveled inwards and have moved to the back of your head. A real sense of something coming out here, coming round, and something coming out here and coming around. And then they just sort of loop into a figure of eight, coming into this point here or wherever. So the eyes softening and hooding. And just trying, it's the difference between the external and the internal. If you think of the external as being everything that's out there, which my mind obviously has to get involved in. Otherwise, I won't be able to move around and feed and everything. And yet there's also this internal world, which is completely inside, which is just a world of feeling. and movement and energy. We're just trying to connect with that more.